Hey guys, it's Tom Box. Welcome to MST.TV, and yes, it's that time of the month again. Well, not that time of the month, but the time of the month where I deliver to you guys the ultimate counter guide, that cheat sheet that you guys look at every now and then, especially right before a competitive event, so that you guys get a quick refresher on the competitive matchup or learn a thing or two about the things that people are using right now. So make sure you guys smash that like button, hit the subscribe, ding notification bell, or else this segment is going to go to the Shadow Realm. And I sent a lot of people to the Shadow Realm because they were too dirty. And if this segment comes back, I've had to dig this one back from the Shadow Realm. It's gonna be tinted all brown, and you guys are definitely not going to enjoy this segment. So anyways, that aside, one thing I haven't really been promoting enough of is the Patreon link. So make sure you check out the Patreon link down in the description. It really helps out this channel, helps pay for the internet bill here so that I can actually upload videos, or else I'll have to go back into dial-up. That means you guys won't see me until I'm an old man. That's all. So in this ultimate counter guide, rather than doing the typical 3-page, 1 floodgate, 1 hand trap, and 1 tech, I have actually 1 additional page of tech, mainly because I came back from YCS Niagara, and while I was judging there, I was judging mainly at the VIP table and the top tables, so I got to see a lot of funky techs that actually brought success to a lot of these players. So I'm going to be sharing with you guys that particular part in the 4th page of tech as well. So make sure you guys hit like if you haven't already, and make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed and part of the subscription and notification squad. And looking into the first page, we have hand traps. So across the top, we have our 7 matchups. We have Sky Striker and Altergeist as our 2 main control matchups. Sky Striker definitely dominating in terms of representation, and Altergeist is made popular thanks to DZeef. And then in terms of our otter matchups, we have Salamangreats and Grenmaju. Grenmaju is a bit of a one-punch man. Salamangreat is kind of a combo control, kind of in between the two. And as for our strict combo matchups, we have Dragon Link, Pendulum Endymion, which now includes Orcus inside of their decks, and then there's also Orcus variants such as Lunalight Orcus and Cyber Dragon Orcus. I think those are the most represented ones recently from what I've seen at YCS Niagara. There hasn't been a lot of Subterror, and as for Thunder Dragons, well, they're kind of getting squashed due to the sheer amount of Orcus out there. So I'm just putting that out there, which is why I'm not covering them in today. You can check it out in the previous video. Now, going down the line of Sky Striker in terms of hand traps, Ash Blossom Joy Spring, they can hit engage mainly as the sole target, or you can use it to hit a Shizuku. But in terms of hitting engage, you have to time it out properly, making sure that if it's the very first card they play, that usually means that they have 2 engage, or they have actually nothing else to follow up with it. So there's that, because usually they want to max out on engage's benefits of drawing an additional card after your search. In terms of Ogre, you can hit the multi-roll, and since multi-roll is at 1, they have to recycle it with a Hercules base after that. Although some people opted to play Barricade Borg Blocker to actually fetch it back, but in any case, hitting that multi-roll makes the matchup much easier to play and much less grindy. In terms of impermanence or effect Veiler, well, Veiler, you can use it to hit the Shizuku before you go into the end phase, which is very, very helpful. But you can also end phase impermanence the Shizuku. You can also hit the Kagari as well, so that they can't fetch back their cards, which actually could mean trouble for some people because they can't get their engage back. In other words, they're not getting the most solid board possible. Hayate is also another possible hit, especially if you are going, you went first and you're still holding onto your hand trap and they want to punch you so that they can throw engage in there. You can use it to prevent them from doing so. But that is kind of minimal. It only kind of stuns them out for like maybe a turn, and if they already have it in their hand, you basically wasted a hand trap. Phantasme, well, is basically fantastic against the deck because Sky Striker cannot play without links, so you'll always be able to benefit off of it, and you can use it to prevent stuff like Widow Anchor, Afterburners, stuff like that. Smashy Rock in Nibiru does nothing against the deck. Lancia, a very bad card against Sky Striker. Don't use it, or else the multi-roll gets free cards. That's right, you don't want them to be able to recycle the cards multiple times. So that kind of covers the Sky Striker lineup in terms of the 6 hand traps that I've chosen to cover for today. In terms of Altergeist, you can hit Personal Spoofing and the Pot cards. If they play Pot of Desires or Pot of Extravagance, you can ash those. It's perfect because I think that actually works out very well. There's actually quite a few search cards. There's also Meluseek if they try to go ahead and link it off and then use Meluseek's search effect from the graveyard. In terms of Ogre, I like Ogre a lot more against Altergeist because you can pop Protocol or pop the Personal Spoofing. Personally, probably want to hit on the Protocol because your Ogre can get negated by Protocol. Yeah, there's that. And in terms of Valor or Impermanence, you can line up the Impermanence to the Protocol, but in most cases it's not very good because the Protocol can basically negate your Valor, and it doesn't really work anymore. So there's that instance right there where Protocol becomes a bit of a problem. Phantasme, not that great against Altergeist. Smashy Rock, they don't exactly summon enough for you to smash them, and Lancia does nothing against that deck either, so that kind of covers the Altergeist matchup. Into Salamangre territory. Salamangre, you can Ash the Signet Mining, but make sure you Ash the Gazelle, because the card that Gazelle dumps into the graveyard is what really sets up their control. They're mainly going to dump in their trap cards, and if they're dumping in their trap cards such as the Roar or the Rage, it's going to be less cards for you to deal with if you stop that right and nip it in its bud. Now, Ogre isn't as great because Balinks gets set up pretty early in their combo, and therefore their Mirage Stalio is usually protected, and that is unfortunate. So Ogre, I don't think it's actually one of the better options, but if they haven't really set up their Balinks just yet, or they've already baited out of Balinks, and then Ogre can actually get something solid out of it, why not? And in terms of Effect Valor, again, hit the Gazelle. Gazelle is the thing that you really want to stop. Phantasme is also a very solid card because they have to go into links or else they can't play with their back row. So in other words, it's another link-based deck. Smashy Rock works very well against Salamangre. If you can Nibiru them, because you can just kill off everything and prevent them from having a link monster, which completely shuts down the back row, and giving them a token that does basically nothing. It just means that you have a bit of a free turn to take care of the problem and never let the Salamangre deck come back from below, basically. Lancia does nothing against the deck, so yeah, there's that. Well, I guess it kind of does something, but it's kind of pointless. It prevents Balinks. That's about it. In terms of Grenmaju, Ash, I really don't know this matchup well enough, so if you guys can leave something down in the comment section, that'd be great. What are you really going to Ash? They run a ton of danger. They run trade-ins. They just run... Well, maybe you can hit the trade-in. I would say you can. There are certain things you can hit. You can hit their pot cards as well, so that they don't draw cards. But ultimately, they really just want stuff to get banished for the most part, so they can fuel up their Grenmaju. They can fuel it up with whatever means possible, really. So Ash, if they open with a handful of danger, Ash is just kind of mediocre. In terms of Ogre, I don't think Ogre is that great, to be honest, because most of their monsters don't even activate their effects, and for the monster that does, Eater of Millions, kind of activates it during the damage step, so you can't even Ogre them. Now, Valor and Impermanence is an amazing card, which will save your life because they can prevent the damage to go through, because it can also prevent the copy of Eater of Millions from banishing your cards. You can Effect Valor them earlier on in the main phase so that the Grenmaju can't punch you for game. Lots of things going for it. Phantasme, not a great card against this particular matchup because they don't exactly link summon that much. They most likely are going to XC summon perhaps something into like Sanafon to block out the graveyard. Now, Smashy Rock Nibiru does work against this deck, but only if they open with a handful of dangers and they decide to spam out dangers. Then you can actually wipe the board, give them the token, which is also fantastic. If you know that you're going against Grenmaju, you might be incentivized to use Lancia and shotgun it. Don't chain it to say cards like Pot of Desires, because by then it would be too late. I think this is more of a shotgun card so that you can actually stop them from advancing their turn. Although they'll still play out their danger cards, but they can't play their pot cards. They can't use Gizmek. They can't use basically anything that sets up Eater of Millions for the most part. So Grenmaju wouldn't be the biggest threat, but remember, the deck is mainly like a danger Grenmaju deck, not just like a soul win condition dependent on Grenmaju. Now, looking into Dragon Link, unfortunately, Dragon Link is the one deck that gets basically hit by every single card on this list. There's not a single card here that's actually terrible against it. Ash, you can hit the Guard Dragon combo. You can perhaps even hit, say, Dragon Ravine when they decide to dump the card into the graveyard to get an additional dump. Basically, the Foolish Burial effects. You can hit the Dragon Shrines. You can hit the Guard Dragon combo, which is probably the more recommended part to hit. Hit the LP. So Ash is just ultimately just hits almost every single play in this deck. Ogre, on the other hand, not as well versed in my opinion, but if they're playing the FTK variant, you're gonna be able to hit some of the cards available. So yeah, Guard Dragon combo once again. Valor, same idea as Ash. There's so many targets you hit, and a lot of these cards remain on the field so that you can hit them fairly well. And in terms of Phantasme, you can get a 4-card draw out of the Phantasme if you really need to. But Phantasme against the FTK variant, not that great, because you better dig into a second hand trap or else you're going to get killed by a Cannon Soldier. Smashy Rock works wonders against this deck because there is almost no way for them to actually set up the 5th summon to be Appaloosa without having like almost no play left. In other words, they need the perfect 5-card hand to do so. Therefore, Nibiru usually can smash out this board. Anyone that's playing Dragon Link, I recommend you guys to look into playing various traps so that you can handle the Nibiru and extend past it. That's just my little giveaway for you guys, so that you don't extend it to the 5th summon. You can just go into Herratic and play a couple of traps, and you can actually hold the board down pretty well, or just opt to go second. And in terms of Lancia, there is one card that Lancia affects, and that is World Chalice Guard Dragon. You need to banish it to summon out the dragon out of the graveyard, and if you get Lancia, that's not going to happen. And also, Tempest will not be able to summon anymore because you can't banish cards. So in other words, you might end on a weaker board altogether. But if you do get hit on the World Chalice Guard Dragon, as long as you have like a quick launch or something like that, you can probably extend past it. And in terms of the Endymion Pendulum Orcus deck, lots of cards you can ash. There's like the Spell Power Mastery. There's basically anything in there. The entire Guard Dragon combo is also available. In terms of Ogre, kill the Electromite. I recommend taking that card out because that card synergizes a lot of cards. There's also Zephyrath and a lot of the Zephyr cards as well. You can definitely ash those as well. Just a ton of cards, really. But remember, if they do have Zephyr Providence in their graveyard, they can actually protect their cards, just to keep that in mind. Effect Veiler Impermanence, of course, Guard Dragon combo, and Electromite. Phantasme is still fantastic because this is now basically a Link deck if you're going to be playing any form of Pendulum. Now, Pendulum Endymion, you can still use Smashy Rock against them, especially if they don't have the proper setup. If they don't have the negator for effects, then you can smash them. Otherwise, this is not going to work. It's definitely going to get negated. But remember, if you have Nibiru plus Impermanence, you will win any sort of interaction just because they're just going to lose anyway. So that's why like Nibiru is so strong when you pair it with a second hand trap. And Lancia does nothing against this particular deck because they don't rely on banishing cards out of the graveyard. And in terms of Orcus, Lunalight, and Cyber Dragon, okay, I guess this is just basically an Orcus matchup. Ash, you can definitely ash out their Mermaid. You can take out their Harp Horror or their Nightmare, their Orcus Nightmare. The Ogre, kill Galatea, or you can kill the Nightmare monster that they summon out if they choose to activate it and they have no means to protect it. Some people do have the Sky Striker engine in there just so that they can use Eagle Booster to protect. Impermanence Veiler, again, you can hit the Mermaid because it just makes it very awkward because they've burned 2 summons to get to the Mermaid, and only for them not to have a Orcus monster to follow up. That part really sucks for them. In terms of Phantasme, Phantasme isn't exactly an ideal card against Orcus. It is nice to be able to dig cards and put a body on board, but aside from that, there's not many effects that target your side of the field, so Phantasme otherwise is just a body and nothing more than that. But if you want to maximize on your draw, you can time it for the Graveyard Galatea, and maybe hopefully you'll draw into a Nibiru so that you can wipe the board. Speaking of Nibiru, Nibiru is kind of nice. Oh, actually kind of want to talk about Phantasme one more time. So against Cyber Dragon Orcus, if they go into Infinity, that part really sucks. Because if you can see that the Infinity is coming, make sure when you summon out a Phantasme, you summon it out in defense mode so that it does not get absorbed. Although you can make them try to absorb it, but then they'll negate you and destroy you anyway. So either way, kind of sucks. But if they go into Cyber Dragon Infinity or they go into Azathoth, the Nibiru will be pretty much useless for the most part, because even if they get into Cyber Dragon Nova, if you decide to drop the rock on them, it doesn't work because Cyber Dragon Nova summons out a light fusion monster from the extra deck if it's sent to the graveyard by your opponent's card effect, and that part sucks. That part is awful. And they'll summon out a Mekaba. They just continue from there. With the token, they continue to make the Orcus combo. And the true turn skip for them, it is going to be Artifact Lancia. Without the ability to banish, they won't be able to use their Harp, their Symbol Skeleton, and they're not going to be able to use their World Wand or their Nightmare. Basically, you stun them out of 4 cards that extends their combo, and that kind of is the complete shutdown. So it's a bit unfortunate for them, but if you can drop Lancia on them, it's usually one of the better bets. And I've seen a lot of people actually use Lancia over the past weekend at YCS Niagara to stun out some of these players. So anyways, let's move on to the next set of cards, Floodgates, before we get into the text. Our Floodgates of the list, we have There Can Be Only One, Necro Valley, Gozen match, which is kind of strange. I should have probably updated this one. The Summon Limit, Mystic Mine, and Imperial Order. So going down the list with Sky Striker, Floodgates are not very good against Sky Striker. They're kind of mediocre at best because they have natural outs, such as Mystical Space Typhoon and Afterburners, just in case if they don't have. And Afterburners is such a good card to maintain card advantage. Blow up your opponent's 2 cards, it's a 2-for-1. So looking at There Can Be Only One, not very good. Afterburner, as mentioned before, and they themselves play There Can Be Only One because they realize that they can actually sit on Hayate and punch you to death. That's also a possibility. In terms of Necro Valley, as long as Necro Valley can stay live, it's very good, but if it can't, then it is very bad, because Necro Valley does shut down a lot of things, like multi-roll, does not get to reset cards, you cannot use the effective ray to resummon out of the graveyard. Overall, it does have a really good long-term effect in terms of canceling out what Sky Striker do to kind of recover. Gozen match prevents the Sky Striker player from going into any more of their Link monsters because none of the other Link monsters are of the same typing, and you have to go into a different type different attribute every time. So that is a bit of a limitation, but again, Afterburners, Mystical Space Typhoon, Cosmic Cyclone will naturally out this particular card, and since they run it in multiples, it's very likely that they will see it, and also Afterburners is a searchable card. Now in terms of Summon Limit, they themselves also side this card, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. It does make it a bit weirder for them because they can go into one Link monster and then go into a second Link monster, and that's it. But it does not hinder them from summoning out Ray from the graveyard and then tagging into perhaps, say, a Kaina to block another hit. So there's that going for it as well. Mystic Mine doesn't exactly do anything against Sky Striker because they can sit under Mystic Mine and punch you with Hayate, and they can play Widow Anchor to kind of move things over and around. Imperial Order is one card of a Floodgate against spells that does crush them, and in terms of Secret Village of the Spellcaster, same idea, complete crush out of Sky Striker. They really can't do anything about it. They need to somehow summon out 2 Sky Striker monsters, or 2 monsters entirely, to bring down this particular card. So if you see a Sky Striker player trying to break this one, they're gonna have to summon out I would say one of their hand traps to do so, just so they can go into a Phoenix to pop this particular card. It is very devastating. If they open a handful of spells, it's GG for them. So next up we have Altergeist. Altergeist, There Can Be Only One. Sounds decent on paper. The problem is they actually naturally have outs against it. Silky Disc plus a trap can bounce it. There Can Be Only One back to the hand. And Melusi can just send it to the graveyard. Overall, not too much of a problem there. Necro Valley is really bad against it as well. Same idea, just that they're bounceable, they're just sendable, and Melusi is just a natural out to basically all these problems. Of course, in most cases, you might actually have to hard draw to get there. Summon Limit does not affect them at all because they really only need to put out 2 summons. One's the Multi-Faker summon, and the other is just that one other one that comes out from it, and that's it. And then you have Silkius Multi-Faker, and you can just abuse that Multi-Faker non-stop. Mystic Mine is actually a pretty decent card against Altergeist, because they have to tribute off, or rather they have to like personal spoofing away most of their cards just so they can empty it back to 0. It might buy you about 2 turns worth of time if you time it out properly, but if you see a personal spoofing, just pop it and then you can sit under that Mystic Mine for much longer, buying you enough time. That's just personal experience, but yeah, Altergeist, they do have out against Mystic Mine thanks to personal spoofing, shuffling cards away. And then Imperial Order, it doesn't really do anything against them. They play Pot of Extravagance, and that's basically the only thing you're going to negate. Why not just use an Ash against it and save Imperial Order for another slot? Now, in terms of Salamangreat, There Can Be Only One, very good, because they are monotyping, and monotyping gets crushed out by There Can Be Only One. They can't combo, they can't go into anything. They need some sort of spell trap removal to take care of this particular problem before it gets out of hand. Necro Valley also works very well against this deck because the inability to move remove stuff out of the graveyard completely locks out the deck from comboing or even establishing some of the back row that requires to be refetched out by a Sunlight Wolf. Goes in match, terrible card because they're all fire. And then there's summon limit. Very fantastic card. Combo-oriented decks need to summon more than twice, and this is one deck that needs to gain control through comboing. You won't have either. Mystic Mine. At first I thought that, oh, they have Rage, you can just take this card out. Well, guess what? You can't really add the Rage that easily. You have to hard draw into that Rage to get it, and therefore Mystic Mine will buy you X amount of turns, unless of course they already had it, but some people are opting to play multiple Rage just to deal with the Mystic Mine because I think most of them have come to the conclusion that Mystic Mine forces you to have Rage in hand already. And Imperial Order doesn't really do anything. It does stop Silent Mining and it stops Salamangreat Circle. That's about it. Some people opt to play the Fusion as well. I guess you also have Will of the Salamangreat, which is really good, but overall, they can manage even without those spell cards, which is why Imperial Order has very little impact in terms of the long-term grind. In terms of Grand Maju decks, don't use There Can Be Only One. They're like mostly monotyping. I guess that there's the Eater of Millions and the Grand Maju themselves. Those two together are fiends, but most of the rest of it are danger monsters, and they don't really match in terms of typing. Necro Valley doesn't exactly do anything for the most part because you're not banishing anything from the graveyard, and you're not really a graveyard reliant altogether. Just move on from there. Goes in match, might do something. Most of their cards are dark, but Grand Maju is fire after all, so there is that. I guess might be a thing. Summon limit, they don't care, to be honest, unless they're trying to do the danger combos. They're trying to push out into Sanafon, you can lock them out, and then maybe they're in a bit of an awkward defense position because of Ogopogo, and they have Nessie on the board as well. Maybe that's a kind of a situation that they might get stuck on, and no Grand Maju means you're not going to die for the most case. In terms of Mystic Mine, yeah, it's fantastic. It just shuts them out. That's it. Nothing more really need to be said. And then there's Imperial Order. I don't know how many spells that they actually play, so you could perhaps hit something. You guys leave a comment down in the comment section. And Floodgates against Dragon Link. Man, you know why it sucks to be Dragon Link? Because Dragon Link basically gets smashed by every single possible card on this list. There can be only one. Your dragon typing kind of sucks, to be honest. But if you're playing cards like Guard Dragon Cataclysm to do some popping, that's fine too. Then you can actually use it to maximize to your advantage. Pop cards, gain cards, whatever it is. Necro Valley hurts as well because you do summon a lot from the deck, especially with the Pisty and the Red Eyes Darkness Metal. I don't know, there's a lot of cards that comes from this, and then you also use the summon of, say, Darkworm. I play Darkworm in my variant. There's just so much that gets hindered by that Necro Valley, and being unable to banish from the graveyard also sucks as well. Goes in match sucks against this deck because mainly dark, so mono attribute does not hurt by, well, it doesn't get hurt by Goes in. Summon limit hurts, we're a combo deck, and Mystic Mine hurts because we are a combo deck, and Imperial Order does hurt, but mainly only for the turn 1. After the turn 1, most of the card effects are now effect based by monsters, so there's that. Pendulum Endymion, there can be only one. Depending on what you have, you could either be stuck under Spellcaster or you could be stuck under Dragons. There is that, but if you have Spellcaster and Dragons, you can quite easily go into a Nightmare Phoenix and pop off the there can be only one. But make sure you have a proper follow-up, because anyone that's playing a Floodgate like that usually has something up their sleeves aside from just that one Floodgate. Necro Valley doesn't do anything to you because you don't rely on your graveyard as much unless you're trying to start your combo up with Darkworm. Then Darkworm kind of sucks. So if you have Dragon Shrine, it won't do anything. So it can cancel out your Dragon Shrine. Goes in match, it does work against you. Electromite is fire, and because things get awkward and you only have a fire on the board. Summon limit also, we're combo. Mystic Mine, we're combo. And Imperial Order, all our search spells are basically shut out, so it does cause a bit of a limitation. And if you're trying to use Master Cerberus or anything like that, you're not going to be able to use any of those effects because they're spells once they're as a pendulum scale. Then there's Orcus. Orcus, there can be only one. They're all machines, so they get shut out. A Necro Valley, can't banish, sucks. Goes in match. You can use Goes in match when they go into like Nightmare Mermaid. Now they're stuck underwater, and if they're stuck underwater, it well, it sucks for them because they can't really summon any dark monster. But once you shut out that dark monster, or you get rid of that nightmare monster, they can go back into darks. So it's kind of iffy. Then there's Summon Limit, of course, combo deck. Mystic Mine were also a combo deck, but a lot of them opted to main deck Cosmic Cyclone now, so might not stick as well. And Imperial Order, you might stop like the Sky Striker engine or whatever sub engine that they have in their deck. But for Cyber Dragons, you can perhaps stop them from machine duping. You can stop them from adding that particular card. What was it? Cyber Repair Plant. You can stop them from Cyber Rev System. There's just a lot of cards that you can technically stop. And you can even stop Lunar Light Orcus from using their perfume and all that other junk. So that's why it's not complete X off, because I know that with 2 monsters, their whole point is to get to 2 monsters. So if they get to 2 monsters, Imperial Order is kind of like a mute point. So that would be the floodgate for the matchups. Now we move on to tech page number 1. Our lineup of cards for tech page number 1: Pankratops, Super Poly, Red Reboot, Denko Sekka, Mind Control, and Cosmic Cyclone. I guess a lot of these are more targeted towards control decks. So looking at Pankratops, it's just big and chainable, and because he's big and chainable, he's usually very useful at breaking boards. Usually a step 1 into breaking boards. Super Poly against Sky Striker, not most ideal, but there is a situation that you might get OTK'd because your opponent decides to Super Poly your Ray and a Dark Monster, putting out a Starving Venom. If you're main decking Super Poly, that's the most likely case. After that, most likely you're going to side out Super Poly because that is a very situational example there. Then we have Red Reboot. You're going to use it to stop their floodgates and infinite impermanences. That's about it. Denko Sekka, an amazing card, shuts out the entire back row. If you put out Denko, try to get the OTK right away. Mind Control is okay, it baits out the Ego Booster, but if Ego Booster has met the requirement of 3 spells, then you're not going to be able to kill their monster. Unless that's your goal the entire time and trying to swing into that one monster over and over and over again to hit 8k. Cosmic Cyclone is pretty good, I would say. You can use it to hit their multi-wall, but again, you can use it to hit whatever you need for this particular matchup. So there's that. Then there's Altergeist. Altergeist, I think, with Pankratops, it's decent enough because it's big and it's usually bigger than most of the monsters there, so you can try to punch. But if they have like an Altergeist, a multi-faker for Silky Dust, they'll try to bounce it, and if they have a protocol in the back, they will try to negate your pop. So sometimes it's better off to let them bounce it back to your hand and just play it again later on. But if you have a follow-up, say a Ghost Ogre, then you can pop the rest of it, then yeah, you have a pretty good chance of just wiping most of the board altogether. Super Poly is not very good against Altergeist because they just don't have anything for you to Super Poly with. Red Reboot is fantastic because it just shuts down all the traps, and they don't exactly have a counter trap to stop you except for Solemn Judgment that a lot of them do main deck now. And then there's Denko Sekka, which is a fantastic card, but again, if they have Solemn, they'll kill your Denko. But you know, they're trading life points for it, so I'm fine with that. Mind Control is kind of iffy because they have a lot of chainable effects that say a spoofing to shuffle the cards that you're targeting, or they can just bounce it back and just completely ruin that particular play. They're always going to benefit off of anything that starts a chain, especially if it affects stuff on the field, because they have that advantage. Cosmic Cyclone is pretty amazing. You can use it to take out some of these problem cards. Again, if you have 2 cards in combination, you can usually use it to wipe out most of the background. Altergeist's scariest part is, I would say, the backup of Protocol next to most of their plays. So there's that. And a smart Altergeist player will abuse the fact that, you know, they can just spam spoofing as much as they need to, just so that they can always recycle Multi-Faker or search into Meluseek or search into Marionetta, just so that they have a play the following turn. Now looking into Salamangreats, unfortunately Salamangreat is the one that gets hit by most of these techs here. Pankratops, because it's big and chainable, it's very awkward for them. They have to try and pop it. If they try to pop it, they'll have to chain. In other words, they get to bait out multiple cards with one Pankratops. Super Poly, you can use your opponent's monsters just to go into a Violet Chimera, completely wiping their entire board for free. Then there's Red Reboot. You can use it to shut down their traps, but keep in mind, if they're using Rage and they have a second back row, likely that second back row is going to be a Roar, so you have to use it on the Roar to make sure that you can bait out cards properly. Denko Sekka is also a very good choice against them because aside from those particular cards, there's nothing really scary about Salamangreat. So if you have Denko, they should basically lose if you can OTK. Mind Control, you can bait out a certain chain. Cosmic Cyclone, probably again bait out a certain chain, mainly some stuff. If they only have one back row, you can use it just to turn it off, and then you can just play safely from there. Ren Maju, Pankratops is pretty solid. You can use it to pop one of their monsters because most of their monsters don't have any sort of protection. Super Poly is iffy. You can kind of go into the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon because most of the other monsters they play are dark, and you can kind of use it to take out a particular card, but not recommended. But this is only under the case that you main deck Super Poly, then you can still make some use out of it. Red Reboot, not very good against them. Denko Sekka, they don't really play very many back row. Mind Control, I guess it's decent. You can just take control of some of their stuff and just play with it, but it is what it is. It's just Mind Control. If you want to break a board, if they establish something too big for you, then take control of whatever that's too big and just play with it. Then there is Cosmic Cyclone. I'm not sure if you want to banish more cards for them, that being said, and lower your life points so that they can one punch you even easier. And they don't really play that many back row. Dragon Links, Pankratops, you can break the seal. It's a seal break. Because you can attack, they chain, and then you can chain this one, and then now they have to bounce one of their own cards because they activated it. So Pankratops usually can force into the battle phase pretty well. Super Poly can wipe out the deck because it's a dark based deck, so you can go into Starving Venom or even Boral load Furious Dragon if you decide to tech that. Red Reboot, they don't really run traps unless you're playing my stupid variant that does run traps, and I'm actually including a lot more traps now because I'm a control deck, guys, that has a combo in there, and I like to play the FTK, so there's that. And then there's Denko Sekka, not very good. Mind Control, it baits out various chains. To be honest, you can Mind Control perhaps the Hot Red, just Mind Control whatever you need just to bait out some of the negations and then try to break a board from there. That's how it usually works, especially when decks like Orcus that main deck Mind Control, that's how they break your board for the most case. Cosmic Cyclone, no back row. Pendulum Endymion, Pankratops, again, it's a seal breaker. Yeah, that's basically it. It's a pretty big monster, so you can usually punch over something as well. And then there's Super Poly. Super Poly not as good because Odd Eyes Vortex is a win. They don't really put out that many dark monsters at the end of their turn, so Super Poly doesn't exactly have anything to go into for the most case. Then there is Red Reboot. You can use it to stop the Zephyr Trap, the Zephyr Counter Trap, Divine Strike. And sometimes even stop the Orcus Crescendo. They could have double counter trap if they set up properly. Then there is Denko Sekka. I guess you can just summon Denko and just stun him out, but trust me, I think Denko is most likely going to get crushed out by some of the other cards, just because it's just not as impactful as you might think. Mind Control baits chains. Cosmic Cyclone, I guess you can bait out Scales, but aside from that, it's just they just have enough negates to kind of take care of most issues. Against Orcus, Pankratops, I think it's kind of mediocre. I've tried it, you summon it, and then most of the cards can't even be destroyed by battle. Most of them can't really be destroyed by card effect thanks to Dingir's just sitting on the board. Super Poly is amazing because you can just wipe out all your opponent's monsters because they're all dark. Red Reboot is mainly there to kind of counter Crescendo, so it's decent enough. And a lot of people are opting to run multiple crescendos, so if you do use Red Reboot against them, expect that they will set a second crescendo onto the back row, or maybe Impermanence. Denko Sekka, it's doo-doo. It's not very good. In terms of Mind Control, it's really good in the mirror match, or if you actually have Orcus cards in your extra deck. So like a Dingirzu, you can just overlay with their Galatea and just work with it from there. Cosmic Cyclone is actually an optimal choice against them because it can remove the Crescendo or Babok, at least force some of the plays to go off, because then the Dingirzu cannot protect it. And one of the biggest things is that they have that counter trap, and the counter trap is probably the most annoying aspect of that deck, because right now most of them don't open with both a field spell and a back row. They mainly have a back row, and then they kind of sit with a fairly protected board, and they try to kill you the turn after. But if you're able to break the Crescendo first, and then you can just wipe out most of their board and finish them off or maintain control over them, they will not come back. And that's kind of tech page 1. And now we're going to go into tech page 2, which is the most popular tech that I've seen over the weekend. For our tech page 2, we have Epidemic Eradicator Virus, Crackdown, Shared Ride, Mega Fleet, Compulsory Evacuation Device, and Hey Trunate. A lot more cards that are aimed towards control decks for the most part. Actually, more likely aimed towards Sky Striker and Orcus, because those are the most popular matchups at the moment. Looking down the line of Sky Striker, Epidemic Eradicator Virus, if this pops off against you, and a lot of people opted to play the Griffin combo to kind of preset it with Curious, And it's a 90% win button. Any match that I've seen resolve this particular card basically won the game. There was like no way of coming back, especially when the back row is still Orcus cards, and that is really, really deadly. Now, looking down this particular line, what else do we have? Crackdown. Crackdown on, say, the Sky Striker deck. Taking away the Link monster disables the Ray, which potentially leads to death for the most part. Shared Ride, Sky Striker does tend to use Engage a lot, and if you can prevent that and you can use it to draw cards, that's fine too. And Shared Ride also works on the Kagari, adding cards from the graveyard. Then there is Mega Fleet. Mega Fleet has been the most popular choice. I've seen people main deck 2 or 3 of these cards, mainly to take out Ray and use it to destroy some cards such as the Orcus or the Cyber Dragon Orcus in particular. But moving down the line, compulsory evacuation device, not the optimal choice. But Hey Trunade, on the other hand, was a very, very good card. I've seen it blow out a lot of the Sky Striker decks out of the water. They just didn't expect something to just remove everything. And if they abuse the effect of multi-roll, a lot of the cards actually got banished. So the Hey Trunade almost acted as like a Cosmic Cyclone, Heavy Storm-esque card where it just banished everything. And the only thing left behind was the one copy of multi-roll. So it was very, very silly. And Hey Trunade opens a lot of opportunity. If you're not playing Eradicator, definitely try out Hey Trunade, because even removes some of the problem traps that are in the back row. But if they have floodgates, they are likely going to flip it right away. Then there's Altergeist. Epidemic Eradicator Virus is pretty solid against them, because you can just use it to call traps and you can just wipe out basically most traps. But if they have cards like Marionetter in their hand and they're able to reset, then that part really sucks, because then they're just gonna slow roll into all their traps once again, bypassing the effect of Epidemic Eradicator Virus. Crackdown's not very good against them because they are able to bounce cards with Silkidus, and they're able to use spoofing to kind of shuffle stuff away. Shared Ride doesn't do anything, Mega Fleet doesn't do anything, Compulse doesn't do anything, and Hey Trunade doesn't do anything because they will flip everything. So basically everything in Tech List 2 does not really work against Altergeist. In terms of Salamangreat, Epidemic Eradicator Virus basically does nothing against them. You can call spells if you're feeling lucky, but not recommended. Crackdown, I've seen a lot of people crack down on the Mirage Stallion, just taking the Mirage Stallion and right before they even get the summon, and I think they were actually put in an awkward spot because they were unable to put an additional monster onto the field. I think some people are still able to if they have the Jack Jaguar already in the graveyard, but anyone that does not have Jack Jaguar set up and they don't have, say, a Foxy setup or a Falco setup, I saw no recovery coming from taking their monster, so it was really interesting. Shared Ride also works against Salamangreat if you have it sided, because they retrieve stuff from the graveyard. They usually retrieve 2 cards from the graveyard. They search their field spell. There's a lot of cards that they actually fetch out in the very first turn. If you Shared Ride them, they will feel the pain, and even if you Shared Ride them later on, you still might be able to net a 2-card draw from that particular play. Mega Fleet, not exactly the most ideal card right now because, well, the best way to use Mega Fleet is if you sided in Cyber Dragon, or if you main deck Cyber Dragon cards, you can get them to the Mega Fleet. You can perhaps turn off one of their Link monsters, and that's the only Link monster they have. You might have already turned off the entire back row, so that works out really well. Compulse also works to disrupt the mid combo, and then Hey Trunade, you can use it to force out some of the traps they have in the back row as well. So it's actually not too bad using Hey Trunade. You can use it similarly to like an MST almost. And then there is Gren Maju. So Gren Maju, EEV does nothing. In fact, EEV does nothing against basically all the other matchups now. Crackdown, you can use it to avoid getting yourself killed. Remember, if you take Gren Maju, it's not ideal. And if you take Eater of Millions, you can't activate the effect either. So not ideal. But if you use Crackdown to take some of their big walls, such as some of their danger monsters, that might actually work out pretty well for you. And then there is Shared Ride, does nothing really against them. Mega Fleet does nothing against them. Compulse, you can throw away their Eater of Millions or perhaps save your life. Hey Trunade, again, I don't think they have that many back row. Correct me if I'm wrong, but overall, not the most ideal card. Dragon Link, Crackdown, you can use it to disrupt the dragon combo, and usually you should be able to win from there, because if they have two things that lock them into dragons, and they don't have enough monsters left to summon, they usually will lose. Shared Ride, they don't. Well, I guess you can technically use Shared Ride if they're playing the Dark Worm combo. They use Dark Worm, and they also have the search for the Romulus to search out their what's that card? The Dragon Ravine, then that's fine too. If you summon a Cyber Dragon, you force the activation of the Hieratic Seal, so you basically break the seal pretty easily with a simple Cyber Dragon summon, which is a pretty big deal in my opinion, because the bounce effect and the tribute kind of counts as two separate effects, and using one monster you can clear out two effects, which is very beneficial. Compulse, also very good because you can use it to disrupt the dragon combo. You can take away their LP and they will never be able to summon back that LP again because LP is once per turn. Hatred does nothing. And then as for Pendulum, Endymion Orcus, again, Crackdown, you can use it to block a combo. If you want to use Shared Ride, that's a possibility. They have Dark Worm, they have Duelist Alliance, they have Cerberus, they have Mastery, tons of search cards overall. So, you know, that's going to work out for you if you do play Shared Ride. There's just enough cards for you to actually benefit off of the drawing over time. And then there's Mega Fleet, I guess, again, another Force Seal. Again, Compulse, you can use it to break a combo. Simply enough, like just a simple Compulse. I think Compulse is actually coming back into being a card that a lot of people might opt in to play, because it's a 1-for-1 at, well, it sounds like it's a neg-1, but if you hit extract monster, it's a 1-for-1, and it's really cheap and its timing is perfect. In terms of Crackdown against Lunala Orcus or any kind of Orcus deck, I think it's very good because you can just take, you can force out a Crescendo, or you can use it to take their Galatea. And if they can't link off the Galatea, it's very awkward for them, because if they summon into, say, a Symbol Skeleton of the Galatea and you take their Galatea, and if you're playing a mirror match, that's even better because now you get to play with a Galatea right from the start and you can make things right away, which is very neat. Yeah, it kind of screws over your opponent pretty well. So I think Crackdown, again, combo breaker card. Shared Ride, not very good. Okay. Mega Fleet is the one card that you can run against Cyber Orcus very well, because if they end with the board thinking that you have Nibiru, they will put a Cyber Dragon Infinity, they will put out a Dingirzu, and they will put a Galatea. You can take the Dingirzu and the Cyber Dragon Infinity, send them both to the graveyard to put out a Mega Fleet. In other words, it was literally a free plus. You got rid of two cards and now you're only dealing with a Galatea now. So that is why a lot of people opted to play the Mega Fleet, because they know how strong that board that they finish with it actually is. So it's a very big deal in my case. And Mega Fleet, again, there's uses for all the other matchups as well. So that's why a lot of people opted to play the Mega Fleet. And some people even played Chimera Tech, not the Over Dragon, Fortress Dragon, just so that they can wipe the entire board. Like, they summon out a dragon, Cyber Dragon, and then your opponent uses the Cyber Dragon Overflow, the Cybernetic Overflow, to pop your cards, but then you can still go into a Mega Fleet afterwards, so it's still okay. Then there's Compulse. You can Compulse the Galatea, which is very awkward for them, because if they can't get a second monster out now with the Symbol Skeleton, they're sitting on a Symbol Skeleton with basically nothing else intact. Or you can bounce the Dingirzu, because Dingirzu cannot protect against bouncing, so they lose their Ding, and there's no Ding in the graveyard, which means they're not going to be able to send your stuff to the graveyard or reattach cards. And hey, Trunade, you can use it to actually bounce back a bunch of cards like Call by the Grave and Crescendo. And or you can force out the Crescendo, either way. If they have a lot of back row, usually means there's Call by the Grave anyway. And that's kind of my rundown of all these cards. If I missed anything, let me know down in the comments section below. And that's where I'm going to end today's video. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, hit that subscribe button, ding the notification bell, be a part of the notification squad. And if there's anything that I could have improved on, leave it down in the comment section. I would love to read it. And for you guys should also read the comment section. It's not a complete cesspool down there. There's a lot of helpful suggestions, especially for you guys correcting me if there's a better way to play certain text. That is also all valid. So until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. Hopefully by then I'll hit 50K. So I'll see you guys around, and there's gonna be a big giveaway. In fact, there's 2 giveaways coming.